So I'm going to start off with a very simple compound shape. It kind of looks like an ellipse cut in half. You know, very simple. It's just think of like a bread, like it's like a bread shape. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with a z-axis, and I'm going to put in my x-axis, my y, okay, and I'm going to do this for the front, middle, and back, okay. So we're going to have something like that. This kind of tells me the camera angle relationship. You know, it's just a really basic setup to start plotting our shapes on top of this.
Are those verticals like converging down or something?
These are slightly converging, yeah. You're not going to have exact parallels. They're going to be converging down, but you know, it's a really long convergence. So what I tend to do is the middle is going to always be like a 90 degree. It's going to be straight, and the ends are going to they're going to tilt at an angle. All right, so when I do these compound shapes, a good way to start off is creating a box. I'm going to just do one side right here. I'm going to draw in my shape. You see it has that kind of angle, okay? The trick is to do a similar shape, this angle, this decelerating curvature on the other side. And to way to accurately plot that, you want to make sure it's contained inside of a box. Draw an X through the box so that you find your midpoint here. Using that midpoint information, you're going to go from the corner of the box to that midpoint so that you can find the exact measurement of that box. It's going to go somewhere here, match it up, should end up something like that. I'm going to also draw in another box, another X here. Okay, hits directly in the center. The reason why I'm marking an X in the second part of the box is that I have to measure exactly where this curve is going to land. Otherwise, it's going to be visual guessing all the time, and you don't want to always do that, especially when the shapes get more complex. You want some way to kind of translate this information. So you can see that this X right here, this shape lands on this little point. That's where it intersects on this X. You see that? So I'm going to use that information. I'm going to go across, and it's going to land on that point. Okay? That's kind of a simple way to just measure this shape.
You're estimating that point a little bit, right? Like how far in it is? Or?
No, this point is hitting. So if I have, so this is my profile view, and I have my form here. I'm drawing an X, right? And if I drew another X on the other box, which is supposed to be identical to this box form, I'm using these points as just kind of a guide of how far, you know, this curve is going to go. And then I'm going to connect the points just like that. So that's a profile view. And I'm going to do that in perspective. So you guys should have something like that. Okay? Create another form here. Okay, your secondary shape is going to be something like that. And I'm going to do one on the back. And you guys should have something like that, okay? So once you have this front slice, middle slice, and the back end slice, what I want you guys to do is just go from the bottom, from the base, just create a straight segment connecting from the front piece to the back, from the front piece to the middle piece, and from the middle piece to the back piece. So you should have a form something like that. Any questions? If you guys ever want to figure out if this is my front A and this is my mid B, and you want to know the in between A and B, like what these points are, what you want to do is create a guideline through that cuts this. Okay? So this should go into perspective as well. Create a vertical axis. So I have my x-axis, vertical axis that's going up, which is my y, right? I'm going to use this midpoint from this box here, the top. I'm going to measure the same midpoint right here for this box. I'm going to create a segment hitting these 2 points. So you're going to find the height of that axis, okay? And you can literally replicate the same form. You create a box in perspective, and you should have your information right there. Boom. Okay? It's a very simple way of just finding what that volume is if you were to get a knife and you were to chop it. Okay? Alright. Second form. The second shape that I'm going to do is going to be composed of varying compound shapes. I kind of did that in the first one. It's you know, this front one's a little bit wider, or it's a little bit narrower than the middle one, and it kind of goes back, but you know, just to show in a more of an extreme example, I'm going to have a small, really wide and tall, and narrow, skinny. I'm going to have something like that. Okay, so draw on the perspective lines. Okay. Draw my verticals. Again, I'm going to box in. Do the first box here. Do my small compound shape. Transfer that information over. So that's the other box. That should be identical to that. Use the X's to find the curvature of the box the curve that I created in the first box. Should be something like that. And that shape should bend that way. You guys all understand that? Okay. I'm going to do the same with the larger compound form. Bless you. So you should have something like that. And the back should be something like that. Okay. At this stage, what we can do is we can literally combine the 2 points here and just put a segment. But if you guys want a really interesting base that kind of undulates and turns or widens out more, you can do something like this. Okay. Now, when we're doing this, we're creating a new shape as for the base platform. So when you're doing that, you don't want to guess the other side. So this is side A. You want to treat this like how you're creating the other shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to box that in. make an X. Find my midpoint, go into perspective, that should be the center point of that. Draw a segment through that. I should be able to make another identical box. Use these 2 points, and that should be the box for that. So box A, and this is box B. They're both exactly the same. Front, middle, and back. So I have this form that kind of curves out and curves in, and it hits the middle shape. So again, I'm going to use my X information. I'm going to create X's on the other box. And I'm going to use my guidelines to just transfer that information over. It's there. It's there. It's there. So, in theory, my shape should do something like that. You guys all get that? It gets really tricky when you're doing these complex shapes in perspective, because the way we perceive these, you think that you would create an identical shape on the flip side, but the way it goes into perspective, it gets slightly warped. So this is just a good way to kind of plot it and measure these shapes. Okay. This one I'm just gonna cheat it. I'm just gonna go from point to point, do something straight like that.
I'm going to interrupt, but so on that previous step, when you were creating that first curved shape,
This right here?
yeah,
Yeah.
what diagonals were you cutting? Like, what's the order of the diagonals that you cut to then get that shape?
To get that shape on the other side?
Like initially, you just where did you start? I guess it moved a little fast.
Okay. Let's say if I had, I'm gonna do a front view, okay, or top view, for example. If I'm drawing the top view of this shape, okay, and let's say this is my front, this is my mid, and this is my back, right? Let's say something like that. The front of this shape, if I were to do a top view, I'm assuming it does something like that, right?
Right. Can you move it up a little bit? Thank you.
It's going to do something like that. And basically what I'm doing, in order for me to plot this shape onto the other side, I want to box this shape in.
Did you draw that shape freehand?
Yeah.
First time? Okay.
Freehand.
I guess I missed that.
Okay. It's going to be all freehand, like when you're doing the first side
Okay.
of these
That's easier.
complex shapes, and then the way to transfer them over is
I see.
you wanna box it in and create an X. And when you create an X, you're gonna find the midpoint. Using the midpoint, you're gonna create the same box size that this shape is in. Create X's here. Okay. And I'm literally going to use the areas that this is dissecting to plot my information. So if I'm following these X's, it's hitting here, it's hitting here. We could even do like one large one across as well. So these X guidelines are just ways to kind of not only recreate another identical box, but also they act as just intersection points,
Okay.
per se. So in theory it's hitting here. You know, this is probably hitting, I'm just going to guess it's hitting like right here. And that's where you should be able to plot.
So, John, why would that point you just marked, if it hits the intersection of the X on one side, it wouldn't hit it on the other?
The intersection here?
Yeah, see how that point kind of...
Oh yeah, whoops, I kind of, no, it hits right here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry. So wherever it crosses, that's going to be kind of like, you know, just visual cues that, okay, it's going to land here, it's going to land there. Then you can do these complex shapes. So that's just a way to kind of plot these forms. And then I want to go from top of that, I want to go back down. So this is how you can start doing like really, you know, complex, you know, volumes to do your spaceships, or, you know, really cool, like rounded off, like top of your vehicles and things like that. You know, if it's inspired off of a jet or whatever.
Will you be putting these on the blog as well?
Yes. The next one that we're going to be doing is, you know, this is very similar to what I just demoed, but it's complex shape number 2. So what if we had a shape that did something like it pinched? What if we did something like that? The same rules apply. You know, just have your z-axis, your x, your y, oops. I'm just gonna do something like that. Shape's gonna do something like that. The back shape did something like that. Okay, so I mean, obviously, you know, you can get more and more complex with these things. The trick is, in this one, is that you're going to start to see other sections when I start connecting all the points. That segment. And what if we had something like that in the back? Okay, I'm going to connect these top points here, but what if instead of me going across like that, right? What if this top line, what if it dips down? You know, now you're really manipulating these volumes. Now you can go crazy with these. But you want to be able to figure out how much volume that's actually occupying. So if I were to do something like that, like if I had a dipped line and it goes back to the top here, okay, and this top line went out and it dipped under, you know, that's my midpoint information. And if I want to find A, B, C, a midpoint between A shape and B shape, which is AB, I'm going to just create a point here, create a segment that goes into perspective, so I can figure out exactly what this shape is doing. Okay? Now there's no right or wrong way to plot this volume here, it can be rounded off. Okay, it doesn't have to follow this language where it bevels out and it pinches at the top. Okay, this is where you could even do something like that. Okay, where it's more rounded off here. Okay, what if the backside here was straight, like a triangle? This is just information. These are going to be guideline information that's telling you that your volume doesn't have a consistent, it's not going to have one consistent shape. You know, it's transitioning in between. But in order to find out what those transitions are, you want to have these sections. Okay? So this is just like chopping. I'm going to use this point. You always want to draw through. Okay? I'm going to go up here to that point. I'm going to go through. Maybe it hits the top of that. Okay? Maybe it goes back down or something. But if you imagine, like, if I just dissected this, like multiple times, you're going to get some really unique form changes here. What if this piece hits out, pinches at the top?
So each one of those dissections is kind of like plane changes?
Plane changes, exactly. And you always want to start with a beginning, middle, and end. And then you take the beginning and middle and you want to find the in-between of that. So you're basically just figuring out your volumetric transitions. Subdividing.
Each time?
Yeah, exactly. And subdividing even more and more. And obviously it's a way to kind of create what your volume is doing. Otherwise it's just, you know, you're going to just, oh, I'm going to connect this point to that point, and it's always going to have like the same consistent volume-like transition from front to back. And this is just a way to create those complex shapes. Okay, if I found, you know, if I dissected this point here, what is this point? I don't know. It can be something in between a triangle and, you know, it can be something in between this triangular shape and this mid shape here. And so on. Any questions? No, you guys all understand this stuff? It can get pretty complex.
It's a little fast,
Okay.
but I think I'm ready to move on, I guess.
Okay. You guys all understand how to create these forms? Okay. Obviously, when you're doing your designs, you don't try to kill yourself and do these complex dissections and things like that. This is just a way for you guys to plot and create really interesting volumes. Okay. Like when I do my vehicle designs, I don't go into these crazy organic forms, just because it gets way too organic and way too complex for me. But if you guys wanted to create a singular object that had these really interesting transitions, this would be a way to plot that out.
I know you're having trouble with your camera, but I'd really like to be able to see the videos too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll be sure to get that. That'll be the first thing on the list.